Well, it's a subject many people don't want to talk about, substance abuse, but it's something we all have a connection to and can make a difference with.
Yeah, today's In Your Community sponsor, Land's Heating and Cooling, a sponsor of this weekend's Home and Garden Expo at Lincoln Square. And we have two guests with us. We have Troy Lands and speaker, New York Times best-selling author Weldon.
Close enough.
Yeah, well, let's get it right. People are going to actually know your name because you're on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yes, my last book, The Power of Consistency, hit #5 on New York Times list and #2 on Wall Street Journal.
Wow.
Congrats.
Yeah.
This is cool. Well, hang on a second. I want to ask Troy real quick about why you brought Weldon here and what your plans are for this weekend.
Well, we have a Lifeline Connect banquet tonight that Weldon's going to be the keynote speaker of, and then tomorrow at the Home and Garden Show at the Lincoln Square Mall.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us about Lifeline Connect.
It is a drug recovery program, a faith-based one, and right now they currently can only hold 7 men, and we're trying to raise funds to build a 24-man dorm.
Wow, which means almost more than 3 times more the number of people that can be treated.
As you know, the need is great.
Yeah.
It is, and I love that it's faith-based organization. So that's why we brought Weldon in, because you actually have experience being one of those men. Right?
I do. I spent 25 years of my life on the streets. I spent 13 years in the federal and state penitentiary system. From the time I was 23 years old to the time I was 40, my life was completely out of control. And during that time, in 1996, my father passed away. I was in prison. I had 7 years left to serve, and I made a change in my life. I decided I was going to refocus my life and figure out what successful people do, and that's what I began to do. 7 years later, I walked out of prison at 40 years old to a homeless shelter, and from there I built an Inc. 5000 company and started writing books and speaking and doing what I do today.
Wow. So it was your father's passing that was kind of that trigger for you?
Yeah, June 10th, 1996, the realization that he went to his grave with me in prison. Again, it was my 3rd trip in prison. The 13 years was over 3 different trips. And just the realization that he went to his grave. I had a 3-year-old son at the time that I had fathered when I was out on parole. So when I went back to prison, he was 3 years old, so I had abandoned my own flesh and blood. My father died while I was in there, and just the realization of what I had done to their lives and my life, and I had to make a change.
How do people recognize where that time is? Because, you know, you hear people referring to, well, I've hit rock bottom. Yeah. Which this sounds kind of like what that moment was for you.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I found is that change is difficult, and when the pain of not changing becomes greater than the pain of changing, that's when we change. It's an interesting thing you mentioned the rock bottom, because a lot of time there's false bottoms, right? You think it's as bad as it can get, but it can always get a lot worse. I think just when the pain of not changing, the suffering becomes so intolerable that we just have to figure out a better way. I think that's when we're motivated to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're going to be speaking tonight at a banquet, like Troy mentioned. There's just a few limited tickets left.
We have 10 left.
So you better hop to it if you want to come.
For those procrastinators who are still out there.
Right. But you have an opportunity tomorrow at the Home and Garden Show for people to come and meet you and learn a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so Troy and his company and Lifeline Connect brought me into town to speak tonight at the banquet. We actually spent the day today working with a lot of the guys that are in the center now. It was really an extraordinary experience, what they've overcome and what they've been through. And then tomorrow, I believe at 2 p.m. tomorrow, at 3:30, I'll be speaking at the Home and Garden Show, which is an unusual venue for me.
I was going to say, are you going to give us some gardening tips? Or, you know?
We're going there. We're going to do some questioning at a barn next door after.
He's going to be raising up hope. Planting seeds of hope is
absolutely
part of this, right? So tell me a little bit. I could talk to you all hours. So give people a little sense of how that journey started, because I'm sure there are people out there who've hit this place. You know, maybe they're in need of recovery. How do they start that climb? How do they build?
Yeah. Well, after my father died and I made this decision to change, my plan was to figure out what to do. And so I began to read books. I was a 9th grade high school dropout. I didn't have any real experience in life, so where do you start turning that Titanic around? And I began to read books. And the first concept that I stumbled into was a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche: "We attract that which we fear." I thought that was just ridiculous. And then I read in the Bible, Job said, "That which I have feared has come upon me." And I started thinking, well, what do I fear the most? I feared living and dying in prison, never knowing my son, being a loser and homeless the rest of my life. And I looked around and my life was a perfect reflection of those things. So I think the first step is for people, A, to accept responsibility for their circumstances, and B, understand that it's possible to live out of our imaginations rather than our past. That was such an important lesson for me, because it had been so bad for so many years. You think this is just how it is. And then one day you wake up and you realize, wow, I can live an amazing life in my imagination. And if I start figuring out what I have to do to get there, and it's what I talk about in The Power of Consistency, what are the little things we have to do on a consistent basis to get where we want to go?
That is a lot to take in, and so we get this opportunity. I mean, that's big. That is life-changing information. And so the book is currently out.
Yes, The Upside of Fear was my first book. The second book was The Power of Consistency. And the new book coming out this September is Consistency Selling. So check out Amazon.
Okay. All right. Love that little plug there.
Yeah, well, and you can meet Weldon again tonight. How do people get tickets to the event tonight, Troy?
LifelineConnect.org, and there's a button that says tickets. Click on it, and it'll take you right to the Eventbrite.
And hopefully you're one of those lucky 10.
That's right.
Yeah, head over there now.
All right.